Just to, I mean, it's just brilliant to be able to join this kind of space again. So thank you for the opportunity. Where I'm coming from is I work at both the Open University and Exeter University, and I work in education. So I came through an education route, having been a teacher many years ago, and went into higher education. Not on initial teacher education, but I've always been involved in continuing professional development in some way or another. So the kinds of questions that I ask myself are to do with how to support teachers, how to develop pedagogy, how to think about curriculum, how to conceptualise learning, and you know, what all of the implications of all of that are for the assessment frameworks that we might want to use. Over the years, I've become particularly committed to co-participative work. So much of what I do is co-researched with practitioners in the classroom, with partners working alongside schools, and in fact that's how we came to meet one another, and also involving students. And that's what has really led me into what I'm going to talk about now, because what I want to share is some thoughts around how childhood is changing over, I suppose, the last 5 years or so. Probably all of us, I guess, have become more and more aware of how fast, what a rapid pace of change we're experiencing, and the capacity for what William Gosling calls the Knight's move, changes that come out of nowhere. The economic changes that we're all living through at the moment, but also environmental issues, social change, technological advances and leaps, as well as other issues such as spiritual change and changes in that whole landscape. And I've become really interested in what all those mean for children. I was a primary practitioner, but actually what I'm thinking about is children from really 0 to 19, so that's the kind of span that I tend to think about. And how is childhood changing, particularly in this technological environment that we're part of, the ways in which technologies are enabling children to participate in digital means as well as actual means, has become a real interest of mine. So I've just literally yesterday taken delivery of my new book, which is about this. So what I said to Guilherme was, how about if I talk about the 4 themes which are in that book, because I think they actually match well with what we're talking about today, although it would be for us as a group to decide whether or not actually that was relevant at all. So I guess what I want to do is to take these 4 themes, which I call 4 Ps, 4 Ps of childhood, of how childhood is changing. The 4 Ps which are associated with increasingly complex ways of social networking, of gaming, and of generating content. Not that they're separate things, of course they all overlap. How do those 4 Ps relate to the world of work? Well, what are they, first of all? Say a few words about what they are. Oh gosh, I didn't know I had that slide transition in there.
Oh, yes.
Okay. I didn't realise there were so many clicks in this one. So, 4 Ps: possibilities, multiple plurality, playfulness and participation. And I'll say a bit about each of those, a few minutes to each. Pluralities. Oh, sorry. No, just to say that. So, the other strand of my work is thinking about imagination and creativity. So, how is childhood changing? How can pedagogy nurture student development? But particularly, how can we nurture imagination and creativity and generativity, not just of individuals but collectively? So, one of the sort of strands of learning that's come out of the empirical work that I've been doing with colleagues at the Open University is a recognition that what's going on in classrooms, whether they're outside of formal education or within it, what's going on in classrooms where students are being enabled in their generativity, is that both students and teachers have a sense of ownership, a sense of control, a sense of relevance in what they're about, and the capacity to innovate. So these 4 things are present, and it seems to me that for each of the 4 Ps that I'm about to talk about, these are also features. Ownership, control, relevance and innovation. They're present in these kinds of environments and these ways of operating. So pluralities, what do I mean by that? The capacity to social network, to game, to generate content. Whether you're 3, 13, 19, offer multiple opportunities in terms of who we're engaging with. Where are we engaging? How are we engaging? What places are we in? How do we define the kinds of places that we're in? And the examples that you just shared with us, Guilherme, brilliantly illustrate this. What kinds of activities can we engage in? What kinds of literacies are we developing? these are all really quite rapidly changing and different kinds of experiences from the ones that children experience in the classroom. Remember, I'm coming from education, so I'm comparing what's going on in a digital environment to what's going on in most classrooms. The school even which was mentioned earlier on, that's in Devon, although that school is way ahead of the curve in terms of many schools, actually some of what they're doing is incredibly traditional, because it's actually just putting what you would normally have in a face-to-face environment in a digital environment. It isn't necessarily doing all of the things that I just talked about, and which I'll go on to talk about. So these are spaces which are the spaces for socialising and for playing. They're also spaces for learning, different kind of learning where actually there's huge choice in terms of who you're choosing to be and the pluralities of in all those ways that I mentioned. They're also possibility spaces. So the second P is to do with possibilities. One strand of my work is around what I call possibility thinking, which I would argue is right at the heart of generativity. Right at the heart of creativity is the transition from what is to what might be. And what triggers that transition is the question, what if? Which you pose individually, collectively, in multiple ways, not necessarily verbally. And they're also, in possibility thinking, what's going on is often an as-if transition. So what if we were to act as if we were avatars in a particular way? What if we were to act as if we were in the dentist surgery and actually this is a robot who's doing my teeth? There's a transition into as-if space as well as what if. Possibility spaces online, digital possibility spaces allow us to birth those ideas into action in very different kinds of ways and enable young people to do that. These are spaces in which learning is done by doing, but also doing is done by learning, because there's learning going on, deep learning going on, often collectively in these spaces, which is rather different to the spaces which are often possible in face-to-face classrooms. So, second P. Third P, they're highly playful spaces. Highly exploratory, highly improvisational, so that you go into a space, you go into Facebook or you go into the game that you're playing and you have an idea of where you're going, but actually what happens in there, who you encounter in there, what's going on in there alters the reality that you're then experiencing. And in a sense, what digital engagement enables us to do is to get, rather than thinking of children growing up faster and getting older younger, actually I think what digital media enable us to do, in fact, don't just enable us to do, one of the effects of engaging in digital media is that we're actually getting younger or older. We continue to play. So whereas we wouldn't necessarily go, I mean I probably would actually, but you wouldn't necessarily go and sit on the swings in the local park because you feel like swinging on a swing. You would go into a gaming environment in a different kind of way. You might go into Facebook, you might go to another kind of social networking space and be playful. Getting younger, older, so playfulness. And finally, these are highly participative spaces. Now, what I'm saying, I'm not arguing that everybody has access or wants to be part of digital spaces and experiences, nor am I suggesting that every child is spending half their life in the digital space. We know that's not the case. We know there's a wide variety of engagement, but I'm talking about the possibilities that exist and the ways in which childhood is a different kind of experience when children are engaging in these kinds of spaces. So these are participative spaces, they're dialogic spaces which may well generate conflict and incommensurable perspectives. They're not necessarily spaces in which everybody's got to agree and take the same course of action. The democratic spaces, you can be 6 and have a point of view in these spaces, you can be 16 and have a point of view in these spaces, you can be playing together in a way that you wouldn't necessarily back in the playground on the swings. You might have to wait if you were 6 till the 16-year-olds have got off the swing. Not necessarily the same in digital space. So, and there's an interesting blend of playing, friendship, and actually both making and authoring and performing as well as being audience. It's blended together in different sorts of ways. So, highly participative spaces. Now, for me, one of the things that comes out, this is an image which was scribed by somebody. I was talking about some of these ideas earlier in the summer in Galway, and Andrew Park, who scribes actually for various organisations, including the RSA, happened to be there, and he scribed what everybody was saying, and it was so brilliant. He captured what I was arguing so brilliantly that I got his permission to take parts of what he did and to share them. So what's going on in these spaces is the possibility to dream, to participate, to explore, and these are co-emergent spaces. They're not spaces where it's just a personal story, they're collaborative stories. Not sure that I necessarily would agree with Andrew's representation of the particular kind of co-emergence that's going on there, but they're collaborative, collaborative co-emergent spaces. What emerges isn't just belonging to the one. Now, this morning I was talking to my son, who's 12, about coming here. And he said, "Oh no, I don't want to hear about your talk, Mum. I'm not interested in that. I've got a real dilemma. One of my friends, who I will call Adam, he's not actually called Adam, has got a real dilemma. I don't know what to do. What do you think? I want to advise him. What do you think I should do?" And it was so relevant to what we're talking about that I wanted to share it. Adam's mum is not confident with ICT. She's barely on email, and she can barely kind of work out how to text with her phone. She's very concerned to protect her only son, and he doesn't have a lot of opportunity to go online. She says that it gives him migraines, and if my son goes to play at his house and suggests they go online, because my son lives online, the other extreme, the answer is, well, it might give you a migraine, so 10 minutes only. So there's not a lot of opportunity. However, all the other children in the class are now on Facebook. Probably shouldn't say that because they're all 12, but they are all on Facebook. And that is where the social life is going on. And what he was very, very keen to get on. So her feeling was, well, the only way that she could let him be on Facebook without telling a fib about how old he was for her to join Facebook. So I got a request from her to be a friend last night. And I was thinking that was rather unusual. And Hugo explained to me, my son explained to me, this is because then his son, Adam, could then access Facebook. Now, what's emerged in the last couple of days is that he wants to invite certain people to be friends with him, but of course this is going to come from his mother. She is now concerned about whether she is protecting him, which is what she thought she was doing, or whether she's now actually going to be perceived as stalking children. Because she's clearly an adult, her profile's there, so she feels she can't do that. So he now can't connect with his friends, and now there's a dilemma. And so my question to Hugo was, what is the what's at the heart of the dilemma? And he said, well, Adam is not able to join in what we're playing because we're playing online. He doesn't know the latest news. He doesn't know what's happening. He can't get in there. So what should he do? He shouldn't. Yeah, so a whole set of dilemmas there. And I think what's behind this is, he's trying to do the dreaming, the exploration, the co-emerging. He's not able to because of how his parent is, both parents actually, are conceptualising childhood. So there are three main areas that I want to talk about. I've talked about the first already. This is the second area, which is how do we conceptualise childhood, youth, and also personhood. The 4 Ps are there. They are part of our experience in digital environments. But so are these narratives about childhood, youth, and personhood. There is a narrative about childhood and youth being at risk, where we need to protect children and young people. The Every Child Matters agenda was all about that, and rightly so. It has been set up to enable vulnerable children to be better protected. Not that it's been completely successful. Many, many different aspects of it. So the childhood and youth at risk perspective says children are vulnerable. They can only consume through adults in the way that the Facebook example would show. The children are passive. Young people are passive. They don't know. They need to be. So it needs to come to them. The world needs to come to them. Children are novices, and play is a private thing. It's not something that you would share. And if you look at the other side, clearly a discourse that says childhood and youth is children and young people are capable, says that actually they're not, well, they're maybe vulnerable, but it's all about learning and growing up. It's all about becoming liberated, becoming able to have agency in the world around. Children and young people are producers and not just consumers. They're active, they're highly capable, and their play is often public, and that's absolutely fine. So it's very interesting, different discourses running alongside each other until a few months ago, until we had a change of government. This discourse on the right-hand side was actually really growing. It's still clearly present in a digital environment. What's interesting for us as educators is that the one on the left, I think, is now coming more to the fore. So there's this sort of actually more of a loud tension, I think, between the two ways that we can look at our roles as adults, whether we're talking about our roles as educators, parents, or co-workers. So if we take the left-hand argument, if we see children at risk and young people at risk and people at risk from one another and from the world around them, then we adhere to continuity, we adopt positions which say that certain people are gatekeepers and there's a kind of hierarchy there. It's a more closed position, it's a more fearful position, and there's a sense of absoluteness and fixedness in a way that there isn't. If you take the view that we are all about capability, starting from very young, from naught, actually you develop a way of operating together which is developmental, it's co-participative, it's open, it's brave, it's fluid, and it's counter. And it's a living dialogic space where it's possible for impossibility to happen. So you've got these sort of tensions. Now, if we try to apply those perspectives to the workplace, and also to think about them in the context of the digital world. Are you okay? Do you want to come and?
Yeah, we squeezed Derek in. Yeah, that's fine. Sorry, Anne. Yeah.
If we think about them in the context of digital environment and also work, then the vulnerability or the risk side says, well, actually, when you're at work, you do time till it's your turn to move into a new role. You do time till it's time to get promoted. You do time till it's time to get another role. You accept the space you're in. You put on the personae which are offered to you. Don't necessarily inhabit them for yourself. And there's a sense in which one's aware of the risks and the boundaries to the work that's going on. And this model of work is an older model of work. I actually would argue, I think it might still be there in the society and societies which we inhabit. But it comes, I think, and reflects this risk perspective compared with the sense of potential which our digital engagement offers us, and the equally powerful changes in work as dynamic, in which we inhabit time in different kinds of ways. We don't do time, we inhabit it, and again, the sorts of ways in which you've been working in body data space really bring that alive. You know, real time, connected time. We stretch time and have agency within time in new ways, and shape space in new ways. And space is virtual, actual. There's the relationship between the body and the digital. It's all up for negotiation and extension, and for shaping the ways in which we operate in our lives. The kinds of personae that we choose to take on are ones we can choose and have a sense of being able to extend and adapt into, not necessarily clothing which belongs to someone else. And this is a very empowering space, and a space where boundaries are highly permeable. In fact, sometimes it's hard to see what the boundary is. It's just a sort of mesh of connectivity. And to try to bring this, because I think this is the space that we're talking about. One of the questions I have is how much of that's still around in the transition into this kind of space, and what are the implications of it? But also, if we think about this right-hand side space now, how might those 4 Ps apply in future worlds of work? And it seems to me that I won't try to go through all of them, but if you think about robots, for example, and think about robots in terms of pluralities, robots enable us to acknowledge that the notion of self then has a very much wider meaning. Robots enable us to do things which people have traditionally done. So the sense of what a self is, and the sense of the places and spaces in which a self can operate are now plural. Huge extension of possibilities in terms of agency, because it's possible to do something at a far distance through robots, which it wasn't before, and that will continue to develop. In terms of participation, robots enable us to reach a very long way. Not just in terms, I talked about actual participation earlier on in a digital environment. But robots enable us to participate in new ways, and the us becomes different too. So who's participating? I wasn't sure about playfulness in robots. That's something I want to put on the table. I wasn't quite sure how to interpret that. But it seems to me that actually, whether you're talking about robots, avatars, virtual worlds, or telepresence, each of them we can interpret in terms of these strands, and there may be others. They may not be the core strands for those ways of interacting. But I just want to share, before I close, something about the way I've tried to work with the 4 Ps, thinking about how traditional classrooms, and when I say traditional classrooms, I encompass in traditional classrooms the classrooms where pedagogy, learning, curriculum and so on are actually dynamic, creative, forward-looking. Because I think we've got a challenge to bring, I've put together high participation is the sort of vertical axis, and possibilities along the middle. Because I think in a digital environment, what we have is highly playful spaces and highly plural spaces as a landscape. And what's going on in them is high participation and high possibility, almost as trajectories. Now, if we try and place that into a classroom environment, whether we're talking about early years, primary, secondary, or further education, or even possibly higher education, though I haven't applied it to that, we've got a challenge in terms of how to maintain high participation and high possibilities. So what we're trying to do is to develop what's on the top right-hand corner. If we are not to create a complete mismatch between what's happening for many children, although not Adam, outside the classroom, and what's happening within it, we're looking for empowering students, we're looking for actually fostering multiple media and literacies, we're looking to enable young people to generate and to show their creativity and their leadership. Whereas in fact, actually, in many classrooms, what we're seeing is something rather different. We're seeing some version of one of the others in these quadrants. The time is short, so I won't sort of talk about each of those quadrants. I think you can sort of get the sort of drift.
Really clear. Yeah.
I'm just going to move past these two because I just want to look at history. I think historically, up until a few months ago, within education, we were moving from that bottom left-hand corner up to one where we were looking at high provision in terms of digital engagement and also high trust towards students and staff and others engaging with young people, either virtually or actually. These are probable futures, or they were probable futures, they were possible futures, and perhaps preferable futures for learning. They were spaces which were uncertain, where co-construction was going on, co-emergence, where they were dialogic spaces, as I said before, and there was real potency to scrutinise values in them. What we are now facing in terms of education isn't quite clear, because we don't have the white paper yet, but I'm not sure we're necessarily moving on that trajectory. What I want to put forward now, finally, are a number of possible provocations around what I've been talking about. I wonder whether the economic uncertainty which we face is a threat or an opportunity in terms of the world of work. And I was thinking about the risk versus empowerment perspectives. And I'm wondering whether one of the things which may be happening as we all face change in the economic climate is a divergence of response. One which is a possibility thinking one which says, oh, well, what we have here is such and such, what if? How can we operate as if we are engaging in a new set of economic and social and technological and so on relationships? But to what extent will actually the economic challenge that we face trigger something more conservative with a small c, something more like the left-hand side? And I'd really like to put that on the table because I think it has huge implications in the classroom. We already have challenges in persuading staff and adults to enable, as it were, children to get onto Facebook, to take that as a sort of metaphor. And in this kind of economic climate, I wonder what the fulcrum is what's going to happen with the fulcrum. How might those 4 Ps be applied in future worlds of work? I just began to do it, but I don't know. Are they useful ideas? If they can be applied, what would the dominant axes be in work? I talked about pluralities and playfulness as landscape and participation and possibilities as tools within the classroom. But perhaps in the world of work, would pluralities be more useful as tools than participation? So would it be an axis where you had possibilities as the vertical axis, but pluralities as the horizontal one, which takes us into a space where we are in an enabling and an empowering position, rather than a position where we say we're frightened of what digital environment can offer us at work. And finally, and this last one, I don't know whether people want to embrace this particular final provocation, it's all about potential. Can the future world of work really embrace potential in fundamental ways? This image is just intended to put on the table that we have embraced a way of living globally which ties us economically through globalisation and has all kinds of consequences. And some of the changes we're experiencing are because of the decisions we have all individually and collectively made. So one of the things I want to ask is, often that question is asked of education. I think it does need to be asked of education, but I'm wondering what the potential is for the world of work to address ways in which we're operating in terms of really very fundamental values. And I think that's where I want to stop. So leaving with Andrew Park's image of this is a space for us to think together. So I hope there have been useful provocations to get us thinking as a we. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.